Please, don't leave me like this. Margaret's trembling voice echoed through the hospital room. Her frail fingers clutched the bedsheet as tears streamed down her cheeks. Across from her stood Grace, the daughter she had spent years secretly destroying. Grace, Margaret cried. You have to listen to me, before it's too late. Grace stared at her mother in silence. The machines beside the bed beeped steadily. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Margaret whispered the words that would shatter everything. It was me. Grace frowned. What was you? Margaret's body shook. Everything. A tear rolled down her wrinkled face. The scholarship letters. Daniel leaving you. The rumors. The opportunities you lost. Her voice cracked. I caused all of it. Grace felt her knees weaken. The room suddenly seemed smaller. What are you talking about? Margaret closed her eyes. Because I was jealous of you. Silence. Absolute silence. Grace could hear nothing except the pounding of her own heart. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of nightmare. A mother couldn't possibly destroy her own daughter. Could she? 20 years earlier, nobody would have believed such a thing. Back then, Grace was the pride of the entire community. She was the girl everyone admired. The girl teachers talked about in staff meetings. The girl neighbors pointed at proudly. That's Grace. She'll go far. One day she'll be somebody important. At 17, Grace seemed destined for greatness. She was intelligent, kind, disciplined. Everything appeared to come naturally to her. Whenever there was a competition, Grace won. Whenever there was an exam, Grace topped the class. Whenever there was a problem, Grace found a solution. People loved her. And that was where the problem began. One afternoon, Grace returned home carrying a certificate. Mum. She rushed into the living room. Margaret looked up from the couch. What happened? I won the state science competition. Grace practically glowed with excitement. They said I'll represent the school nationally. Margaret forced a smile. That's nice. Grace paused. Just nice? She had expected more. Did you hear me? Yes. Margaret nodded. You won. I'm representing the entire state. I said that's nice. The excitement slowly faded from Grace's face. Oh. Margaret noticed. For a second, guilt flickered through her. Then the familiar bitterness returned. That evening, visitors arrived at the house. Everyone wanted to congratulate Grace. Your daughter is exceptional. You must be so proud. What an achievement. Every compliment aimed at Grace felt like a tiny knife in Margaret's chest. Nobody asked about her. Nobody cared about her sacrifices. Nobody remembered the dreams she once had. The conversation was always about Grace. Grace this. Grace that. Grace's future. Grace's success. Margaret smiled politely. But inside, something ugly was growing. Later that night, she sat alone in the kitchen. The house was quiet. She stared at an old photograph. A younger version of herself smiled back. There had been a time when people spoke about her future too. There had been a time when she dreamed of becoming somebody. But life had happened. Responsibilities. Failures. Missed opportunities. Years passed. Dreams died. Now everyone looked at her daughter the way they once looked at her. And she hated it. The feeling scared her. But it was there. Growing. Waiting. Months later, Grace achieved something even bigger. She won a prestigious scholarship. The letter arrived on a bright Saturday morning. Grace screamed so loudly that neighbors rushed outside. Mum. She burst into the house waving the envelope. I got it. Margaret took the letter. Her eyes moved across the page. Full scholarship. Tuition covered. Accommodation covered. An opportunity most students could only dream about. Grace threw her arms around her mother. We did it. Margaret stood frozen. We. No. Grace did it. Not her. For a brief moment, she imagined tearing the letter into pieces. The thought shocked her. She quickly pushed it away. What is it? Grace asked. You don't look happy. Margaret forced a laugh. Of course I'm happy. You seem worried. I'm just tired. Grace smiled. You always worry too much. That night, the town celebrated. Neighbors brought food. Friends came to congratulate Grace. Even local leaders stopped by. Everyone talked about the bright future ahead. Meanwhile, Margaret sat quietly in a corner, listening, watching, boiling. Then came the sentence that changed everything. An elderly neighbor laughed and said, "Grace will achieve more by 25 than most people achieve in a lifetime." The room erupted in agreement. Margaret's smile vanished. Something inside her snapped. For the first time, jealousy became stronger than love. The change was subtle at first. Little comments. Little criticisms. Little wounds. Don't get arrogant. Success changes people. You think you're better than everyone now. Grace always looked confused. Mum, why would you say that? Because somebody needs to keep you grounded. Grace believed her. After all, she was her mother. Who else could she trust? Years later, at university, Grace continued thriving. She graduated near the top of her class. Professors praised her. Employers noticed her. The future looked brighter than ever. Then she met Daniel. And everything changed. Daniel wasn't just successful. He was kind. The type of man who remembered small details. The type of man who listened. The type of man who made Grace feel seen. Their relationship grew quickly. Within a year, they were inseparable. For the first time in her life, Grace felt complete. One evening, Daniel knelt beneath a tree in a quiet park. "Grace," he said. His voice trembled. "I don't want another day without you." He opened a ring box. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled Grace's eyes. "Yes." Daniel laughed. Grace laughed. And for a moment, the world seemed perfect. When they announced their engagement, everyone celebrated. Everyone except Margaret. She stared at the engagement ring on Grace's finger. A ring more beautiful than the one she had ever received. A future brighter than the one she had ever lived. A happiness deeper than anything she had ever known. And for the first time, a terrifying thought entered her mind. What if Grace got everything? What if she became everything Margaret never could? That night, while Grace slept peacefully, Margaret sat alone in the darkness. Her phone rested on the table. Daniel's family number was written on a piece of paper beside it. She stared at it. Minutes passed. Then hours. Finally, with trembling fingers, she picked up the phone. And made the call that would destroy her daughter's life. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. "Hello." Margaret swallowed. "Good evening. My name is Margaret. I'm Grace's mother." The woman on the other end sounded pleased. "Oh, Grace's mother. We've heard wonderful things about your daughter." Margaret closed her eyes. Wonderful things. The word stung. "Yes," she said quietly. "That's actually why I'm calling." "What do you mean?" Margaret hesitated. Even now, a small voice inside her begged her to stop. "Hang up. Tell the truth. Protect your daughter." But jealousy had been growing for years. And now it was stronger than her conscience. "There are things you should know before this marriage happens." The silence on the other end immediately changed. "What things?" Margaret lowered her voice. "Things Grace hasn't told you." And then she began. 1 lie became 2. 2 became 10. 10 became 20. By the time the call ended, Daniel's family no longer saw Grace as a loving fiancée. They saw her as a manipulative woman hiding dangerous secrets. Margaret hung up and stared at the wall. Her hands were shaking. For several seconds, she felt sick. Then another feeling appeared. Relief. The terrible feeling disappeared almost as quickly as it came. The next few weeks were confusing for Grace. Daniel's calls became less frequent. His texts became shorter. His enthusiasm vanished. At first, she assumed he was busy. Then she became worried. One evening, she finally confronted him. "Daniel, what's going on?" "What do you mean?" "You've been distant for weeks." "I'm just dealing with family issues." Grace stepped closer. "Look at me." Daniel sighed. "What?" "Tell me the truth." He avoided her eyes. That hurt more than anything. "Daniel, did I do something wrong?" "No." "Then why are you acting like this?" Daniel rubbed his face. Grace, maybe we rush things. The words felt like a punch to the stomach. What? Maybe we should slow down. Her heart dropped. Slow down. Yes. Grace stared at him in disbelief. 3 weeks earlier they had been discussing wedding plans. Now he wanted to slow down? Where is this coming from? Daniel remained silent. Daniel. Nothing. Talk to me. Finally he looked at her. The sadness in his eyes frightened her. My family heard some things. Grace frowned. What things? He hesitated. Then he repeated some of the lies. Each accusation hit like a bullet. Grace couldn't believe what she was hearing. That's insane. I know. Then why are we having this conversation? Because the information came from someone close to you. Who? Daniel looked away. Your mother. The world stopped. For a moment, Grace thought she had heard him wrong. My what? Your mother. Grace laughed. A short, disbelieving laugh. No. Grace. No. She shook her head repeatedly. No, no, no. She called my parents. That's impossible. She did. Grace backed away. Her breathing became uneven. Her mother. The woman who raised her. The woman who taught her right from wrong. No. It couldn't be true. Daniel stepped forward. I didn't want to believe it either. Then don't. Grace. She would never do that. Daniel looked heartbroken. I wish that were true. Days later, the engagement ended. Officially, Daniel said family pressure made the marriage impossible. Unofficially, doubt had poisoned everything. Trust was gone. Love wasn't enough anymore. When Daniel walked away, Grace felt part of herself die. She cried for weeks. She stopped eating properly. She stopped answering calls. She stopped smiling. Margaret watched everything and said nothing. One evening, Grace sat on the edge of her bed staring at the engagement ring. Mum. Margaret looked up. Yes. Do you think I deserve this? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? Daniel leaving. Margaret's throat tightened. No. Then why did it happen? The pain in Grace's eyes was unbearable. Margaret looked away. Sometimes life isn't fair. Grace nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Then she began crying again. After she left the room, Margaret locked herself in the bathroom. For the first time, she broke down. She slid to the floor and sobbed. The guilt was becoming harder to ignore. But instead of confessing, she doubled down. Because admitting the truth would mean admitting what she had become. Months passed. Grace slowly tried to rebuild her life. She focused on her career, applied for several highly competitive programs, attended interviews, worked harder than ever, and every time opportunity knocked, somehow it disappeared. A prestigious company never received her acceptance form. A scholarship committee claimed she missed a deadline. An employer said she failed to respond to multiple emails. Grace couldn't understand it. Neither could anyone else. Your luck is terrible, friends told her. She laughed weakly. Apparently. What she didn't know was that the missing emails were being deleted. The letters were being hidden. The phone messages were being erased. And the person doing it lived under the same roof. One afternoon, a courier delivered a large envelope. Margaret answered the door. The logo immediately caught her attention. One of the country's top medical training institutions. Her stomach tightened. She waited until the courier left. Then she opened the envelope. Congratulations. Grace had been accepted. The opportunity could completely transform her future. Margaret stared at the letter for a long time. Then she slowly folded it, walked into her bedroom, opened a drawer, and buried it beneath old clothes. Weeks later, Grace received a rejection notice. She sat in stunned silence. I don't understand. What happened? Margaret asked. I thought I had a chance. Maybe there were stronger candidates. Grace lowered her head. Maybe. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. The hidden acceptance letter felt like a brick sitting on her chest. Yet she still refused to return it. Years passed. One opportunity became 10. 10 became 20. Grace's confidence slowly disappeared. The bright young woman everyone once admired was fading. She stopped chasing dreams, stopped taking risks, stopped believing things could get better. Meanwhile, Margaret watched the consequences unfold. Every day became harder. Every lie grew heavier. Every success she stole left a deeper scar. The strange thing was that jealousy had never given her happiness. Not once. It had only given her temporary satisfaction followed by permanent guilt. Still, she remained trapped. Too ashamed to confess. Too selfish to stop. Then life delivered a punishment she never expected. One morning, Margaret collapsed in the kitchen. The coffee cup shattered against the floor. Grace rushed inside after hearing the noise. "Mum." Margaret tried to speak. Nothing came out. Her body wouldn't cooperate. Fear flooded her face. "Help!" Grace screamed. "Somebody help!" Within minutes, an ambulance was racing toward the hospital. As doctors surrounded Margaret, one terrible realization settled into her heart. She might not have much time left. And if she died now, the truth would die with her. But the guilt? The guilt was already killing her.